You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
So we had another question, another caller for Kayla, Ken from California. How many other programs on this station get calls from California? But Ken from California had a question for Kayla about energizing nonprofit workers. So Ken, what you got?
Uh-oh.
Hey, Dave, everybody. This is Ken from California. How are you today?
Wonderful,
living the dream.
How are you?
Good. So I really like how you guys phrased it, but the question is, for everybody but in the nonprofit sector, how do you create a space where young workers feel they can safely express their concerns about their job and then take the next step?
So,
Yeah.
Are you talking about in a union environment or in a
nonprofit, non-union environment, trying to move towards a union environment?
So that sounds like the perfect question for Kayla.
That's right.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah, this is a really common thing that we talk to workers who. So I would say, first of all, talk to your coworkers. Have some of these one-on-one conversations about what some of your issues are. And if you're having an issue, it's probably pretty clear that, other people are having a similar issue, or, maybe there's some type of systemic problem that basically, you're facing. And so getting workers to kind of focus on like, what's the issue at hand and how can we solve it? And more often than not, you can take concerted activity without a union. You can sign a letter, you can have a walkout, that sort of thing. But you're really not going to create sustainable change without a union. And so I would then tell the group of workers who are the organizing committee, who are most energized about the union, to do some research and find a union that would represent workers like you. So my union, the Nonprofit Professional Employees Union, there are many other, depending on the type of nonprofit, your location, there are other unions that represent workers like you across the country. Reach out to them, have those initial conversations, and basically you're gonna have to do, especially now, we're all on Zoom, a lot of nonprofit workers are working from home. Have a lot of Zoom calls after work. We try to make them fun. People can bring drinks, they can have songs, trying to make it a fun space, and also one where, we create and foster trust so that they know that we're actually working in that worker's best interest.
Yeah. Ken, did you have a follow-up to that, or is that?
No, that was expressed very well, because I remember back in the day, almost 40 years ago, when I organized a chapter at the district attorney office, all the nervousness that goes through you, getting the vote going on. So I'm glad that Kayla addressed the audience, that people that are not in unions realize you can do it.
Yeah. And Brother Ken's, he's a friend out of California. California's got a little bit better labor laws than we do in Alabama. Fortunately for y'all, unfortunately for us. But even then, you see what happened this past week with the Uber and Lyft drivers. And, it's just terrible for those folks. So a union is going to help no matter where you're at, no matter what state you're in. And it kind of goes back to the same thing that me and Jacob always tell you: don't rely on the government for assistance. Organize yourselves and work collectively to gain what you want. We can push the government out. I'm kind of the anarcho-syndicalist ideologue that says we should be doing everything ourselves. Get away from this incessant need on the government to do things for us, and start taking those matters into our own hands. And with that,
Yeah.
dead silence.
Ken,
you start talking radical on the radio, and everybody goes, I don't know about that.
Ken, thanks.
Man, that sounds all good. Prop 22 was a nightmare.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It
Keep
was
up
terrible.
the good work.
Thanks for the call,
calling,
brother.
Ken. Yeah, I mean that gig stuff. They're totally being. They're being taken for a ride with that independent contractor status, and
It's
not
gonna
only
start spreading.
And not only that, but there was a story out of the WWE here recently about there were some folks talking about a union drive, and they fired one of their pretty popular wrestlers. Zelina Vega, because she supported unionization. And the WWE wrestlers, man, they've got a crazy case. They are classified as independent contractors, and so they legally can't have a union, quote unquote. But the WWE says that they can't have any other side gigs. They can't wrestle for anybody else. They can't even have a Twitch account because they can make money on it. And it's like they're not they're employees. And the WWE is totally taking advantage of those folks. They don't have the benefits that they ought to. I mean, it's really, really a bad situation over there.
And look, none of this, and I'm sure Kayla can speak to this, but none of this happens in a vacuum. For anybody out there listening that, you know, we're in Alabama, but we got listeners all across the world. For anybody that thinks, well, that Uber and Lyft really didn't have any effect on me, you know, I hate it for them, but not a big deal. None of this happens in a vacuum. This type of legislation, whenever it gets passed, it spreads like a cancer. And every other business will start looking at that and saying, there is another opportunity for us to exploit our workers that we're not doing. So, and I'm sure it's probably, I mean, I'm not going to bash the nonprofit sector, but I would assume it's probably fairly prevalent in the nonprofit sector as well.
Yeah, I mean, so talking about like Prop 22, if that could happen in California, that can happen in any state across the country, and it's going to. I would definitely watch, you know, the misuse and overuse of independent contractors, which we've already seen, you know, so much in the last few years, but I think it's about to get a lot worse. Yeah. But then, yeah, in the nonprofit space, I mean, kind of related to that issue, one of the issues that we fight for is creating, you know, employees instead of relying on contractors. If there are folks that management just keeps hiring to do the same type of job year after year on contract, we think, you know, they need to make that person an employee so that they have all the benefits of being an employee. They're doing bargaining unit work. They should be in the bargaining unit. And so, you know, kind of figuring out all the ways that management tries to erode the bargaining unit and fighting against that.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, and we do the same thing. And in cases where we recognize this is kind of hit and miss work, we always advocate. If you're going to bring union workers in, we've got what we call a subcontract committee. So if you're going to subcontract some work out, we have members on our board. It's an equal board of half management, half labor, and we advocate for union subcontractors. For years we had a non-union electrical subcontractor in our facility that was doing a lot of work, and we finally just slammed our fist down on the table and said no more. And IBEW 558 is the recipient of that work now. So, you know, make it a broader swath if you are going to subcontract, and let's bring in other people that we know aren't being exploited, that are getting fair wages and a good pension and good health care benefits and able to take care of their family.
And that do good work.
Yeah,
you know, talking about union labor, you know, Rudy Giuliani quite obviously did not have union hair and makeup people. If he had hired an IETSE local to do his hair and makeup, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
That is so true. I loved that. IETSE's social media has been fire lately.
I love everybody
for good reason. So they got screwed. I mean, you know, they called out the Trump, I don't know, what do you call it, the Trump campaign group for the first time in like generations that they haven't used union labor for their
RNC. It was the RNC. It was the first time that a major party in the United States had not used union labor for the setup in decades.
Yeah, it was a long time.
In decades.
So
and that,
during a pandemic of all things. I mean,
and one of their keynote speakers was this random no-name teacher from California that hated the union.
Yeah,
like
perfect.
Jeez, it's crazy.
Well, we saw how that worked out for them.
Yeah.
So.
yeah. Thankfully, it did not work out very well. But Kayla, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. We kept you a lot longer than we thought we would, but I appreciate your patience and you're hanging out with us. Have you got any kind of closing thoughts for people before you roll out?
Yep. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, maybe I should look into a union, definitely do it. If you have, friends or family who are in some type of precarious situation, especially now during the pandemic, unions are protecting workers. They're providing safety procedures. It's really, really important to have those because corporate interests are trying to take that stuff away from you through eroding government protection. So reach out to a union organizer. Feel free, if you're a nonprofit worker, to reach out to us at npeu.org, and we can help you either work with us or find a union that suits you.
Yeah, we've got several friends that's non-pride. I've seen a few of them commenting this morning on the Facebook page. I'm not going to call them out because they know who they are. But we've got several close acquaintances that's non-profit, and you may have sparked their interest. And if they don't know, they forget where to get in touch with you at, they're more than welcome to reach out to us on the show, and we'll put them in touch with you.
If they're in Alabama, they can absolutely reach out to us. David and I are both in the Labor Council here in North Alabama. We know people in the state Fed here in Alabama, so we can absolutely get you in touch with some unions right here at home. So Kayla, thank you so much for talking to us. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Have a great weekend.
Yes, you too.
Yep.
All right, so folks, that was Kayla Blado. She is the president of the Nonprofit Professional Employees Union, which is a local of the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, IFPTE. We've got one more segment, and going into that, we had another caller who asked us about co-ops, what we think about co-ops. He said that Professor Richard Wolff, he is an economics academic, talks a lot about co-ops, so we're going to talk about that on the other side. And if we've got time, I want to talk about this Tyson story. It's some crazy stuff, but I'll kind of preview my thoughts. I think co-ops are great. I think worker ownership is good things. I think how do we transition to that is an interesting question. I think we need to make the laws more amenable to worker ownership. I think there's a lot of advantages that hierarchical businesses get in the tax code, and we should be doing things to address that. So we're going to talk some more about that on the other side. This is the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your time. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week and get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we also clip segments throughout the week. And we also upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So you can see if we're on your listening platform of choice. You can go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. And if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, then consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report.